Hi, I'm Fred Olen Ray, and welcome to the Grindcast.
Welcome to the Grindcast, legendary writer, director, producer Fred Olen Ray. We appreciate you coming, and you're in our documentary Masters of the Grind, but you truly are a master of your art with over, I don't know, 150 movies. Is that correct?
No, it's more than that. It's last I looked at just directing was 163 or 165, and that didn't include, I don't think, things that I directed, saving somebody else's movie that got fired or replaced partway through. And it doesn't include the films I produced but didn't direct, which was there's substantial, almost 20 shows that I produced and did not direct.
I probably
Um,
asked you this years ago, but was there ever did you always knew sort of you wanted to direct once you got that in your head?
no, I wanted to be a makeup artist, and I did pursue that when I went to California. I ended up directing The Alien Dead because my partners, which was Henry Kaplan of I Drink Your Blood, and another fellow with a video house, nobody wanted to be the director, if you can imagine that.
Alien Dead.
And I just kind of fell to me. And uh, and when I got out to LA, I was doing effects work, model building, and I found that you were constantly being, job would finish, you'd be let go, you might go a month or two. And I had like a 4-year-old child. I mean, I was a single parent with a 4-year-old child, and I was working at Surrey and Associates building models and stuff of Rose Wolf frayed floats and miniatures. And I did the Frankenberry and Count Chocula commercials where I sculpted the masks of the characters for kids to wear in a Halloween spot with them. But then as soon as the Rose Bowl came up, you're out of a job again, and you weren't making enough to get from project to project with a little boy tagging along. So I really did concentrate on trying to be a director where I could make a certain amount of money and it would carry me through the year. And I've always told my significant other here that nothing puts money in the bank quicker than going to New York every January, February and making a Christmas movie for television. Because it's a big chunk of change for basically for me, 3 weeks of leaving town. And I'm retired from the Directors Guild now with a full pension. So I have a pension for the rest of my life from the DGA, and I'm still working. So but no, I kind of fell into directing by default. Nobody else wanted the job.
This is a weird question, but did you ever go to the American film market? Did you ever take in any or try to sell any of your movies at the American
I'm
film
still
market?
a member. I'm still a member of the American film market. I can go
Okay.
anytime I want.
But did,
But it does fill up your mailbox, your email box too, with people trying to sell you their movies or set up screenings and things of that nature. But no, I was going to the American film market back when it really was what you really wanted. If you're a Grindhouse fans, you really wanted to go probably around 1984 when it was on Sunset Strip at the Sunset Hyatt. And across the street was the Sunset Marquee, which was not, there was no market there, but that's where one lung producers like Kenny Hartford and people like that would go rent suites there and get people to walk across the street from the Sunset Hyatt to come over to the other side of the street where cheap people were. But no, we had films with Alexander Beck and stuff right back to Scalps and films of that nature. And it was a wild time. A friend just sent me one of the old varieties from that period of time, which had the incredible giant full page ads for, the Filipino action films and some from Thailand and some from Italy and, all those film markets that don't exist anymore that are sadly gone now. But it was a crazy time. Ken Hartford he rented an army tank and parked it on Sunset Boulevard right in front of the Hyatt for this terrible movie called Commando Girls. or maybe it was released as something else, but it was awful, just a terrible movie.
Have you been there recently to the American film market?
You know what? Since I don't live in Los Angeles anymore, and it was being held at the Lowe's, Santa Monica, and we did go there a lot, and I met a lot of interesting people. Some people whose work I admired who snubbed me, and then some people whose work I admired who were really nice to me. And I ran into some of my old bosses who were not so high and mighty anymore. And I had the pleasure of having left them behind a little bit. So no, I enjoyed going there, you know. But you had to be able to get upstairs and you had to have a badge. And a lot of people would want to borrow a guest badge from somebody who had a suite, but I was never into that. We just bought our membership and got our badges and went about our business. But if you read my book, there's a story about how Steve Barkett and I went there and we seriously broke the law. I mean, I don't know what punishment we would have gotten had we been arrested. It's probably, probably technically it was considered kidnapping, but I didn't see it that way. But it was right there in the Los Santa Monica. We went there and we closed off one of the people's office and we said, no one's coming in and no one's going out till you get your checkbook out. And they did, but they asked if they could write me the check in the lobby where they were surrounded by people. And I said, sure. I said, don't make sure this doesn't bounce on, so I don't have to come back. Barkett, if you knew Steve Barkett, he was a rowdy, semi-dangerous person. And I just put him at the door and I said, Steve, no one comes in, no one goes out. I said, I'm going to go out. Let me go in there and see what happens next. And so that was at Lowe's Santa Monica.
That's crazy. Yeah, we went last year, I guess, when it was in Vegas, but now it's back to LA because Vegas was a debacle.
Well, there's no what do you call it? There's no exploitation films anymore. I mean, Roger Corman used to have a big corner suite. Troma probably still has something. But I mean, it was a crazy time back when I worked for Transworld Entertainment because we were in partnership with Eduardo Sarlui and his daughter Helen. They had a company called Continental Film Organization or something, but they were importers and producers of like Italian, Ator the Mighty Eagle or whatever. They were Conan ripoffs and Road Warrior ripoffs, and I got involved with one with Joe D'Amato, a guy named Arista de Masachesi, and which I ended up quitting and taking my money and running. But that was the time back when this Commando Squad and crazy shit like that could be made and was making a ton of money. That's when the market was fun. I could go from these suites and look at all the ads and stuff and look at their trailers and all that. Now you go there, the foreign films, they're all about Mozart or something. You know what I mean? There is no Thailand film market anymore. There is no Philippine action film production house, or even India, where I went and made that Roger Corman movie. India was a big exporter of films for other similar type countries, but even that was gone. Everything's gone.
It's a different scene, I guess. Let's talk about Jacko, the first Jacko you just wrote, correct? You didn't direct it.
You know what? I just came up with a story concept, and then I brought Steve Latshaw onto the show, who had done two films for me up to that point. And the first film they did for us was not great, but it came at the right time. So it was a great producer. It made a ton of money. The second film was much better, but did worse. And so we said, well, we're not going to do this anymore. And then Phil Donahue show came and said they'd give me an entire episode, if I was in production on some kind of horror film. And I thought, well, that publicity alone would probably be worth it, but I didn't want to get involved in something low budget. So I came up with an idea and I gave it to Steve and Pat Moran, and they kind of ran with it. You know what I mean? And I gave them the money and I supervised the edits, and I did my thing from my executive producing chores from Los Angeles.
I tried to find it on like streaming. Is streaming anywhere?
Yeah, it's right on Tubi, I think for free.
Jacko?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and because it was shot on film, but it was edited on tape. That was that period of time when people were doing that shit. And so in a Blu-ray was like impossible. We didn't know what to do. So finally, it was a popular film. So we retransferred all the negatives to HD, and we laid in the analog tape for the soundtrack and a picture reference, and we eye matched those takes back to the original film
Wow.
to achieve an HD, a beautiful HD copy. And we put it out on Blu-ray, and then when it went out of print, we put it out streaming. It's on Amazon Prime, and I know it's on Tubi. I'm not sure where else it might be, but yeah, it's out there. I think it's Tubi. It's you can see it for free right
So
today.
are there 35 millimeter prints out there of it?
No, because it was edited on tape, so it was a tape
I bet
master.
Tarantino could make a transfer on 35 and show it at the new BAP. That'd be awesome.
Well, you could, and I know that they've just done a 4K version of Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers from the original 35 camera negatives. And from a 4K or even a 2K, you could make a great 35 millimeter camera negative. But from a 16 millimeter, I'm not sure how, I mean, obviously Texas Chainsaw Massacre was 16, and a lot of other films, Al Adamson's movies are all
Have you ever seen
16.
Have you ever seen Boarding House?
No, I don't think so.
It was shot on like VHS, and they transferred it to 35. It's definitely a little fuzzy, but it played at the New Beverly on a double feature with another movie shot on VHS, which was Trash Humpers, the Harmony Korine movie. But
Yeah, I mean,
they both look horrible, but are great movies.
they were making features in the Philippines on Super 8 and blowing them up to 35.
Wow.
And I was so fascinated. I contacted the company and they sent me some film strips, of the 35 millimeter enlargement. And it looked like Super 8, but the frame size was 35 millimeter. It's still going to have the same, it's not going to get better, let's put it that way, by blowing it up. I mean, we've only done a couple films in 16. Scalps obviously was a 16 blow up to 35, so could play in theaters and so we would frame everything as if it was going to be a 185 production. But people don't understand. You're not interested in aspect ratios, but people don't understand how films are made. Every film, unless you put a hard matte plate in your camera, every film is open framed. On your monitor or in your eyepiece, there's a little line that shows you what the 185 is, and then what's Academy safe, so that even if it's projected on this, even when they're projected, there's a piece of the film that's still a picture area outside of even the full open gate. It's where the soundtrack generally will be printed later. So if people get hold of these camera negatives and they back way out and I guess they see a microphone and they freak out, well, somebody looked at it on the day and said, well, that's above 185 or that's out of Academy safe. And then, of course, you get somebody later who gets hold of the negative and pulls out as far as they can. And all of a sudden you start seeing tape marks on the floor or a guy crouched down in one corner like you do on The Tomb. It was framed to be 185. It wasn't framed to be, full open gate Academy.
That stuff used to drive me crazy. Like in 9 to 5, there's some boom mics and stuff. But now I appreciate it, and I think it's funny as hell, and I dig that stuff. When I was trying to find Jacko last night on Tubi, I ran upon Alienator, and I just watched that movie because I was like, that's one of your few movies I hadn't seen, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. Was the idea to make an Alien Terminator mashup thing, or capitalize on that? Or I found it really unique because I found it sort of a cabin in the woods slasher movie meets an alien movie, so I thought it was very a unique mashup.
Now, see, I hated that film. I saw the Blu-ray and I might have done a commentary track. I don't know, but I feel like I did. And when I watched it, I mean, it was like watching paint dry for me. And I mean, it was two movies. It was literally two films squished together because the original film was just sort of a loose remake of the Astounding She-Monster, where people are stuck at a cabin and there's a female alien and she's trying to get him. And then you find out at the end that whatever her motives are, they were different than the motives they thought it was, and that's She Monster. And then we went and we made it in 6 days up in Kelly's Gulch in Topanga, where they shot all these roughy westerns for Dave Friedman back in the day. And we shot it up there, and we went out and we got this incredible offer. I think we'd spent $125,000 or something. We got this incredible offer for the film, but it had one caveat. They wanted to add Jan Michael Vincent to the film. And I said, well, I said, it's a very compact story. And I thought about it. I said, the only thing you could probably do is go to the planet where this girl comes from and shows how they sent her there and they're monitoring her and all this stuff. So we created, I don't know if it was 30 minutes of more stuff, and then cut 20, 30 minutes out of the original film to make room for it. But we went to a big electric power plant, and we had to all wear hard hats, and there because it was dangerous, and we used it as a place in the future. And we brought Robert Clark in from the Astounding She Monster, and we put him in the film. And I think PJ Souls and Joe Pilato from Dawn of the Dead, and Jan Michael Vincent, and then we cut them together, and then we were paid a tremendous amount of money. And the film did extremely well. And I was told recently that I owned 50% of the sequel remake rights, and my partner on the film owned the other. So we're clear to make a sequel. I just don't. I'm just not wanting to make any films with partners right now. I'm trying to do things my way. I don't want to listen to anybody else.
Even though you didn't like, I think I liked it because all those great people like PJ and Jan, and especially your good friend and mine, Ross Hagen, who I think steals the show in anything. I was just
Ross was in that. Hoke Howell was in it.
I
You
was
know,
laughing my ass off. Ross just making faces as the alien.
oh, there was one time that he was doing that when they were walking to cabin or something. I think one of the other actors just put their hand on his back and just pushed him. They just get in. I mean, the other actors were just so over it. And he was wearing a costume made out of pot holders, I think, and the girl's outfit was from some Sapporo beer bottles. And I had Leo Gordon, who was just fantastic. I was very enamored with Leo Gordon and Fox Harris, who I loved in Forbidden World. They took his liver out and fed it to the monster to poison it at the end of that movie. And,
the two rednecks.
but yeah, it was Fox Harris and Hoke Howell.
Oh man, those guys were funny as hell.
Well, Hoke had been around forever. He was a regular on the Andy Griffith Show, and he's the guy on the boat in Humanoids from the Deep, where tells his son to pay attention, and the kid messes up, and the boat blows up at the very beginning. But Hoke was part of the gang. He was part of the Ross Hagen, PJ Souls, gang. Bob Quarry was in that. It was SAG. I mean, it was Screen Actors Guild, and it was 35 millimeter. And it was real weird because they didn't like this Chuck Serino score, and they took Chuck Serino's score off and they replaced it with some other score, which I thought was terrible. And I thought the electric effects were terrible. If you look at it when they drop this net on her, you can see they've put a mirror in there to mirror the effects. It's the same effect going both ways with a meeting point, a straight line in the middle of it. And then when they went to do the trailer, they went and they bought the music cue from the movie Aliens. It's the part where the girl's going up the elevator shaft at the end of the movie.
Weird.
That's the trailer music for Alienator.
So the Chuck Serrano music's not in the movie anymore, or
No, it didn't make it into the movie, and so I used it. I used it later in a movie called Alien Within. So that because he got paid, they just took it off.
and credited.
Oh yeah, well maybe. I just remember they didn't want the score, and he couldn't understand it, and I couldn't understand it. I love Chuck's work, but I don't even know who did the score anymore. I don't know. I don't care.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, the other guy I forgot was John Philip Locke. He's so awesome, and so serious in the movie when these kids are like sort of like the Scooby Doo gang, in an affectionate way. I thought the kids were great. The teens or whatever. They were dopey
Yeah.
and fun. And just,
Well, the one kid, Jesse Dapson, I picked up from Deep Space. He was the kid who found the UFO crashed at the beginning of the movie Deep Space. But he went on to an Elvis TV series of some sort, and he had a couple years run as a regular on this Elvis television series. And so the people were The people were good. I think Deanna Ortelli, I'm pretty sure she was in that Hispanic actress who was from a TV series called Marblehead Manor. And so everybody had a little cachet.
In terms of the like cyborg chick, was there any inspiration from like Laser Blast? Did you ever see that movie?
I love Laser Blast. I think they should remake it because you can blow up things for no good reason, you know. Even the mailbox seemed like it had a couple gallons of gasoline in it, you know. Jeff Hogue, who was my partner in the film, came in and he had some pages out of a muscle magazine where Tegan was writing a column, and she was ripped. I mean, she was incredibly impressive. But when she came in, God bless her, she was in between competitions. And in between competitions, they become very smooth, but still bulky and thick. And she had all kinds of spray tans and stuff going on, and we put a wig on her. But you know, it was a pretty good image. It's just I just found the movie just it wore it when I saw it recently, it kind of wore on me, you know.
I enjoyed it. Hey, and in terms of your sort of a grindhouse aficionado, in addition to being a grindhouse legend, what are some of your favorite grindhouse movies? I know that runs the gamut of so many things. Maybe something that obscure or not as well known, something like I Drink Your Blood in Pieces, but something a little more B-sidey.
Gee, I don't, yeah, if those aren't B-sides, I don't know what is. I used to see stuff at the drive-in that was crazy, like, and some of it's starting to come back. There was one called "Help Me, I'm Possessed," and uh, and that's coming back. And I thought sometimes you'll see movies made in Florida that never get out of here. For a long time, I thought that the night Daniel died, which it was became Bloodstalkers. I thought maybe that would never see the light of day, and it and I liked that. And I loved the one that was made up in Brooksville by my friend Alan Ormsby. It was called Dead of Night.
Behind their drawn curtains, they waited as fear walked in the dead of night.
Everyone calls it Death Dream, and I don't know why. The movie says Dead of Night. The trailer says Dead of Night. The poster I have says Dead of Night. I went to see it in the theater. It was called Dead of Night. I don't know where Death Dream came from. I think someone said that was a Canadian video release title. And the whole world calls it Death Dream now. But if you look at the film, it's called Dead of Night. But it was a great little movie. And it was made locally at the time for me. And I loved Bill Grafay's movies like Sting of Death and, Impulse, which things I saw in the theaters when they were new. You know, I saw Death Curse of Tartu in a drive-in. But I don't know. I love movies I like Humanoids from the Deep.
Humanoids from the deep. Anywhere you run. Any place you hide. Any time you stop. They will find you. Humanoids from the deep.
I was surprised that movie didn't even run 80 minutes long. I mean, it's only 78 or 79 minutes, which is unheard of. But I liked that film a lot, and I liked Hollywood Boulevard.
In this scene, your motivation is to
stay alive.
Cut! Bill!
He's dead for real! TG, you just don't understand. People are dying.
Hey, that's showbiz.
Everybody's doing it now.
Let's do it.
More of that. Anything can happen on Hollywood Boulevard.
Hollywood.
The Roger Corman movie about people going to the Philippines and making movies and stuff. I thought that was hilarious. But if you want to see, there are two movies that I will tell you about, and I would love to get the rights to them if I could find who has them. One is called Utu by Jeff Murphy. It's just UTU. And that's an incredible film. That's an amazing film. And the other one is called The State of Things by Wim Wenders, which was a black and white movie he made when the money ran out on Hammett. And while he was looking for money to finish Hammett, he went to Portugal and made this movie, again, about people making a sci-fi end of the world movie who run out of money and they're trapped in this crumbling hotel on the coast of Portugal while the producer goes back to Hollywood and tries to, or the director tries to find the producer, and the producer's attorney is Roger Corman, of course. But it's black and white. And in fact, I think both of those films were, no, Utu's in color, but the State of Things is in black and white. So I would love to put those out if I could locate the owners.
Are there any recent movies that you've seen, not just genre, but just anything new that you've seen that you've dug? Have you seen any of the Terrifier movies?
People laugh when I tell them that I don't go to the movies. I don't go to the films. I've gone to theaters to see my own films, when there's a cast and crew screening. I haven't been in a theater since Iron Man 2. And I don't watch new films. And because I don't like them, and I always feel like it's time I won't get back. And I don't like gory films. And so I don't patronize them. It's like people say, well, why don't you go here? Why don't you go there? You were invited to this red carpet thing. And I said, I pay plenty for this house to be able to come here and put my feet up at the end of the day. And that's what I do. And I mean, next week, I'll be 71 years old. And, I've just had 3 surgeries at one time at 3 different places. And one of them's got an abscess over my side now. And so I've just got out of a body cast 2 weeks ago. So, and I don't, Terrifier, the guys were right next to me at some horror convention. I had no clue. I thought it was a locally made backyard film of some sort. I had no idea it was a real movie. I mean, I didn't think about it. I think if I saw something, I saw Nosferatu. I watched that recently. But that's kind of it. If something came along that I was really, really into, and maybe I'm overlooking something, but right now, I would say I haven't seen many of the new films. I saw the one where it was a little girl's doll, Megan, was that what it was called?
Oh yeah.
I saw that because I live with a girl who loves horror films, and she's watching them all the time, and she's watching The Last of Us or The Best of Us or something where fungus gets in people's brains, and then she has a video game where she's killing the people with fungus in their brains. So she's up on all of that stuff, but
It's crazy. It's great. Yeah, Terrifier, like it still is very grindhouse because it was sort of made for not very much money, and then they released it with Fandango events or Fathom events rather. And was it the third one? The third one beat out the Joker 2. What the Joaquin Phoenix movie, The Joker 2, cost $200 million. And Terrifier was the #1 movie that weekend and beat out the Joker. And Terrifier cost like 20 million or something. So it was an independent. I don't necessarily love the content, but I like the gore, the extremeness of the gore, and the fact that these guys are independent and they're taking on the system, so to speak. So that part I like, but it's not my cup of tea per se. But at least somebody's doing wacky stuff.
Yeah, my movie going experiences went way down after I started having kids, and the drive-ins, and there were no drive-ins anymore, so you couldn't take the kids. And now with Blu-ray and DVD, we watched this all take place, where there was a sort of a pay-per-view thing. Initially, it was called Key Cinema by Motorola, but it got to a point where people could program. They could program their own night. They could say, oh, at 8 o'clock or at 10 o'clock, we can watch, the new James Bond movie or whatever. And then it got to where you could call up or dial up or whatever, and you could actually choose the movie. You didn't have to simply pick what was being available and then choose the time. You can now choose the movie and choose the time and stop it and walk away for a while and come back if you want. And now, thanks to Blu-ray and DVD and stuff, people are their own programmers. You know, you want an all-night horror marathon like we had back in the 70s with like five Edgar Allan Poe movies in a row, you can make it happen. You don't have to leave your house. And TVs are cheaper today than they were in the 1960s, and there's biggest theater screens. And so you sit and you kind of go, I'll do what I want. Right now, I've been going through these Italian Gothic box sets from Severin and watching Lady Frankenstein and Scream of the Demon Lover and checking some of that out. And still binge watching the old 1960s Dark Shadows once in a while, because I learned so much about writing. And I've gotten more writing awards than anything else, although I did win an Emmy for producing a TV series. Uh, but I learned a tremendous amount of writing by watching Dark Shadows. And when I made this series, The Lair, which was three seasons, 28 episodes. I just watched Dark Shadows almost every day, and I picked up so much from it that went into The Lair. If you watch The Lair, it is Dark Shadows with gay vampires.
So what do you think of streaming? And also a lot of that from like the business, since you have a lot of movies streaming, do you get paid for? I mean, we
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
I've got two streamers that I use, and I said I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket because I wouldn't understand what the gauge. There'd be no gauge. So I gave one streaming company 6 or 7 movies, and then I gave the other company, 6 or 7 to start. And then here and there, I feed each one of them a new title here and there. Jacko was in the last bat. You probably need to look at it as Jack-O-Lantern because that's its actual title. It's actually, maybe that's why you didn't find it on Tubi, but it's Jack-O-Lantern. But if you type in Linnea Quigley, it should pop up. But I don't find if you had a brand new movie, and I'll be interested to see what the Jacko 2 does, but I don't plan to treat it like the library titles. Because the library titles, you just kind of put them out there and you hope they do something. And people, the more titles you have, obviously, the better you do. And it's like they pay quarterly. And if you have a bad deal with a bad person, you're not going to do well. And subsequently, if you have a bad movie, if your movie's crap, which nobody wants to admit they made a crappy movie, but if you got a crappy movie, it's not going to do well either. And so we found obviously that the better films or the more better known films do better than some of the lower budget things where maybe I financed a young filmmaker, trying to see what they could come up with a little help. Their films don't do that well. And then something like Evil Toons or Phantom Empire or Dire Wolf or Super Shark do very well. But still, it's not enough. If you made a brand new movie for real money, not millions, but, let's say like the old days, we used to crank them out for 140 grand. Haunting Fear, Witch Academy, Evil Toons, all those were almost all 140,000 each because they were 35 and they were Screen Actors Guild, and each one had Robert Vaughn or David Carradine, or it had stars in it that were getting 10 grand a day. But we were doing great. We were making 350,000, 400,000 take home on 140 in. So it was good, but it would take 2 years or so to get that. Now, if you put a brand new movie, if you put it on Tubi, if you were lucky, you might make 5 grand a quarter. I mean, at the end of the year, if you had 20 grand, and you're going to go under. So, we have alternative plans. We're not going to make Jacko 2 and just go and put it on Tubi.
Thank God.
That's just like throwing a bucket of water.
What about some screenings? Getting out there for some theatrical screenings, I think that would be a great.
Well, we'll see what people's interests are. The problem is, of course, is that people don't want drive-in fare. There are fans who do, but there's not enough. I used to tell people because people say, "Oh God, Fred, you need to do a Blu-ray of this. We need a Blu-ray of this." And I said, you know what? You got to be careful that 50 people aren't sounding like 5,000 people. You go, God, people are clamoring for the Blu-ray. Well, no, they're not. And you find that you struggle to sell 1,000. And to that point, everyone wanted Impulse with William Shatner, the kind of lost Bill Grafé movie They couldn't find the copyright owners because he died with no heirs. So they still don't know who owns it. But they said, oh, we'll take a chance and restore it. And they spent a year or so restoring that and put together a beautiful package. Only 2,000 pressed. It's now 2 years later. It's still available. So they didn't even move 2,000 units. And if you don't move 2,000 units, I mean, obviously the guy who was doing it could afford to lose his money, but that's what's going to happen, because the first run of a Blu-ray, the first 1,000 is where all the money is. That's where you're paying the fee to the Blu-ray commission for their little licensing fee, and you're paying for the encoding, and you're paying for your artwork, and you're paying for the rights or whatever. And that eats up everything you make almost out of the first 1,000. So you need that second 1,000 to have a profit.
I think, like Lloyd Kaufman right now is doing like little trauma festivals showing Mother's Day and Toxic Avenger and Sergeant Kabuki, and he's coming out for appearance at the Brain Dead Studios, which is formerly the Silent Theater on Fairfax. And
Sure.
There's Cinematic Void at the Egyptian and stuff. And I think your films, I think you could do sort of like a Fred Olen Ray retrospective, show Jacko 2, get, Sybil out there and maybe some other people from some of your other films, and then, show Scalps or Alien, whatever, make it sort of like literally that Grindhouse ballyhoo and giveaways and
yeah, you can do that, and maybe we would. I mean, we did let them show Hollywood Chainsaw at the New Beverly. It was the closing night of some film festival, because we have 35 prints.
Yeah.
Of that, because it did play in theaters.
Do you remember what else they played besides that night?
It was the last night. Gosh, I don't know, because I know
a while ago, right? It was
because we did a question and answer thing on the stage, and I was still married to Kim at the time, and that's been over 10 years ago that I was married to her. So you got to figure it's been a while. It's been a while, probably 13 years ago.
I think I have the flyer. I'll have to reference later.
Yeah, and then the Egyptian Theater showed it on Valentine's Day with Frankenhooker. And I went there and I did a little Q&A after that, and they showed it there. But now people can show things from Blu-rays or DCP. Like I went to a drive-in in Indiana somewhere where they showed Hollywood Chainsaw from a DCP. And it looked fantastic because it was from the Blu-ray, which, of course, the Blu-ray looks so much better than the 35 print. The print is always one step away from the negative. Every time you make a print or something, it's one more step from the negative. So coming straight from the negative to the digital, it gave you every little bit of crispness and sharpness there was.
So you're not shooting Jacko 2 on 35?
No, not these days. The film itself is so expensive, and it's way more than it ever used to be. And the processing, you even back when I was younger, there was only like 1 or 2 labs in all of Florida that would process 35 millimeter. It's just not a thing anymore. And the machines, it's the same old thing now. They wouldn't know. That people wouldn't know how to edit them on that. I'd say 98% of my editors have never seen a piece of film in front of them that they had to handle and edit. Those kind of guys are old guys. Nobody's cut on film in the independent world, and I don't know how long. It's terrible. But it's a different world. The crews are lousy now too. When I grew up, when I was a kid, they were old guys who were studio guys, and everybody coming in was being trained by these sort of tough as nails studio guys. And and you're in 1985 or 84, you get it into your head the way things are supposed to be done, and now you see the sloppy work being done by crew people you get from the asylum, or someplace like that, and you tell them, this is a hot set. No one should ever put a coffee cup or a can of soda down on a hot set. You would never put that on a dolly. I mean, it's just, or not take a photo. Now that you have phones and you're not doing Polaroids, which we had thousands of Polaroids, you can take a picture of the dinner table so that you can reset it exactly after each scene. If you go for another take, you know exactly how to set the whole dinner table. the people, it's like, oh man, well, gee, I wish I thought about that when I started 5 years ago. It's like I think perhaps in its own way, it might be that it's a good time that I'm slowing down and stepping back from all of this because it just gets further and further away. Because when you have to process the film and you have to sync those dailies by hand and you have to cut on a moviola, you have to know something about what the hell you're doing. I said, even the invasion of the blood farmers, they had to take that light meter reading. Light meter, now they just look at a monitor and go, oh, that's too bright or not bright enough. Gary Graver used to be up there. You'll see a million photos because, like, when people want to take my picture, I point. When somebody want to take a picture of Gary, he would pull out his light meter, hold it up to a girl or something. There's a million photos of Gary holding up that Sekonic light meter that he used. And people now, they don't take light meter readings anymore. They haven't got a clue what you're talking about. And it's there's only a handful of people, but like I was saying, even the invasion of the blood farmers, someone had to measure the light, use a light meter, change the camera magazines out, thread that thing up, process it, sync the dailies, cut it on a moviola, conform the negative, all of those things. Even for a lousy movie like that, you had to have a certain level of technical competence. Where now people go, they turn the lights on in their house and they go, oh, we're lit because we got an image. And oh, the camera's got a built-in microphone. We're getting sound. We're ready to shoot. And all the craft is gone. I don't mean to ramble on because that's not what this
No.
interview is about.
Why did you decide on Jacko 2?
I had another project I was going to do, and I had the key art done as well. I had the painting done and the whole thing. It was based on a comic book. And I'm not going to get into it so much because I will do it. But I wanted to not go to New York. I didn't want to go back to LA like I did on Piranha Women. I wanted to make the movie here in Florida. Well, Florida, for an outdoor movie, you're really risking everything because it rains and there'll be no rain on the forecast, and at 3 o'clock it'll be pouring. And the other one was a swamp movie, very much like an old Bill Griffey movie. And I said, you know what? I was going to go later in the year, which I am, so to give it a chance to dry out and be cooler. So I'm like going a guy in a monster suit hanging around the swamp, and then I started. I got an 8-9 foot alligator lives in my back pond here, right behind my house, and climbs up in the yard and suns himself, and that's right here in my neighborhood. So the idea of spending most of a movie on the edge of a swamp and asking people to wait around out there, you don't know what the hell's out there, kind of wore on me. And all of a sudden, we were approached about the original Jacko by a TV network sort of situation. I don't know much about it, but it's worthwhile. And so I said, you know what? We own the rights to this. It's already got a fan base. Why start with something like this, which could be very hot, very muggy, very mosquito-y, and alligator infested, and when we could just do a sequel to Jacko and be indoors a lot and let it rely on acting and story and all that sort of stuff. So I kind of changed horses in midstream and decided to go this way with the idea that we're going to go out and hopefully strike some kind of an exclusive or a made-for deal, which would garner us an MG that would cover the cost of the film, and then try to pick up the balance of it in foreign. So we shall see.
Cool.
We shall see. But Sybil Danning is starring in it with Richard Gabai, who was a friend of mine, who was in a lot of my films and a lot of his home films, and Bill Griffey is exec producing with us. And I said to Bill, I said, Bill, this may be the only time you and I actually get to our names together on a movie. I said, so let's do this together, because Bill is 95 and I'm 71, and I met him when I was a teenager, if you can imagine that.
Unbelievable.
Back when I just wanted to get started, he let me come interview him for a fanzine I made, and a lifetime relationship was forged. So there you go.
Unbelievable. Going through your IMDb, obviously it's so long, but there's several credits where you have aliases. What were the reason for those various different aliases?
Well, it just depends on which film it was. I was working at a time at a place called Royal Oaks, which became Phoenician or Franchise Films. And I made a children's movie called Invisible Mom. And Invisible Mom went to Italy and became a huge hit. And then Roger Corman was involved, and Roger brought it out here, and it went to #1 most rented video in America. And the company, I did an action film at the same time. I did two films, Cyberzone and Invisible Mom, back to back, basically. But they're very different films. And then you would do these different movies, and nobody wanted to go to a market and say, well, here's this children's film by this guy. Oh, and here's this Shannon Tweed sex thriller. Oh, it's by the same guy who made the little kids movie. And so it didn't seem, and to me, I didn't care. I used to tell people, the only place I want to see my check name in print is on a check. And I didn't have really an ego about it, and I don't really care. I didn't use movies to get chicks or anything else. I used them to feed my children and pay my rent and buy a house, whatever. So if I was making this kind of film, I would have a different name than if I was making an action film or a children's film. And that way, when the buyers came in, there wasn't any confusion about you got this guy doing this. And I'm just saying that I used different names so that when people came in to buy different types of films, they weren't getting the same movie from the same guy. They weren't mixing children's films with Shannon Tweed erotic films, So it helped keep things straight there.
How much longer do you want to keep directing films? It looks like you got some more Christmas movies on deck.
I just did. We just did the look down 2 days ago for A Royal Christmas Tale, which is one I did with the SPCA. About a dog show at a dog shelter. That's why we had different names a lot.
Are there any exploitation?
Oh, we're talking about Christmas movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have A Royal Christmas Tale coming up this holiday season. And obviously, the last one I did was, I believe, Royal Christmas Ballet. I've got this royal thing cornered. The ballet was pretty amazing. I had done a Royal Christmas on Ice prior to that. These are all on Tubi. And I had to create my own ice capade because you can't rent an ice capade. And then I went there and I got kind of snubbed by a ballet company over the Nutcracker in Buffalo. So I had to create my own ballet, which I did. I made a deal with a ballet company, and I found a piece of public domain Cinderella, it was, and I made my own ballet. Well, I had to make my own dog show. This last one, made up of rescue shelter dogs. So it's a very sweet film. I would, and I may, I don't know if I don't make another film this October in Buffalo, I'll just go straight to Jack-O-Lantern. But if I do, I'll go to Buffalo and make this movie in October and come back and still do Jack-O-Lantern at the same time I planned on doing it. But I used to make up to 5 shows a year. And, if you're making 5 movies a year, and I would get a 5-picture contract. And people would say, oh, Fred, though, you made this contract, and this was back in the early 90s. You're doing this for less per picture. I said, yeah, but I know what my whole year is going to be, and I know exactly what I'm going to make this year, as opposed to wondering if I'm going to get another job. And there was a time when, I don't know if you know Haim Saban.
Sounds familiar.
Well, he made Power Rangers, Saban Entertainment. And he came and he offered me a 5-picture deal earlier than this. And he offered me $100,000 to make 5 movies for him over a year. And I said, in true Fred Ray fashion, I said, that would presume that nothing better is around the next corner. And I said, so I will have to say no, thank you. And of course, it wasn't better around the next corner. I made Warlords. So I was looking for the money for Warlords with David Carradine. And I went to Haim Saban, and he would do it, but he wanted me to sign on for a year, and I just couldn't do it. So live and learn.
There you go. What are your 3 favorite movies of all time?
My favorite movies, they probably fluctuate, but only a little. My top tier is Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein and Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Um, the third one would be very hard to say because we'll watch The Green Slime once in a while, because we like that and we'll plug that in. I love Dracula's Risen from the Grave. I will watch that multiple times. You know, in that probably in that arena, I've probably watched the Gorgon more than my fair share.
Do you
But
like freak? Do you like freaks?
I have that. I've seen it a lot. I mean, I was in the sideshow business. I did that for years. Um, but I like Freaks. Again, it's like 1 hour long, I think. But I found it to be pretty entertaining. I mean, I like the old Universal movies. I like them. And I love the Creature from the Black Lagoon movies. But my favorite is Creature Walks Among Us. Probably the one that people think is the least of the three would be my favorite. But that's kind of how that goes for me.
If someone said right now you can do the next reboot of Universal monster movie, whatever monster you wanted, and we'll give you carte blanche, here's the money, just go. You could be black and white if you wanted to. What character would you choose?
I would probably do Creature from the Black Lagoon because the mummy's been ground underfoot here so recently, and too much werewolf stuff, and too much Frankenstein has been reimagined by so many people. I don't know what you could do, but I think if I could have the original Gilman design, I think that would be the one that I don't think has been overexposed in modern days.
What advice do you have for like independent filmmakers that are existing right now that want to make movies? Should they bother with film school? Should they just watch YouTube videos, listen to great people like you, and just grab a camera and just start shooting?
I think never went to film school myself. I did go to school, but I was a broadcast engineering. I have an engineering degree, and I went into television, and thinking that maybe could make me happy because I thought I'd never have a film career, and I thought, well, at least if I worked in the TV station, But if you're really cut out for this and it's really what you want, then nothing else is going to make you happy. There is no settling for a secondary job and that you'd be happy with it. The thing that bothers me, and I may do a few little videos, I was thinking about it as a production diary, is the scripts are so bad. And they don't have to be. Scripts of these independent shows that we see are awful. Not awful, I won't say, because you can't lump them all together, but they miss the very basic structure that I could tell you in 10 minutes what you're doing wrong. And I think people don't spend any time learning their craft. Very few people have any sense of how lights should be set up and how coverage should be done. I mean, Roger Corman, I made so many films before I did some films with Roger. I mean, I had a 100 theater opening in New York City for my movie Armed Response. But Roger still felt like he had to tell me his 5 points of wisdom before I went and worked for him. And I don't think I can remember them all, but I remember some of them. But that's the thing. I think people are missing their craft. They're instead of learning how films are made, they've learned that they can get an image and a soundtrack by just pointing their handy cam and turning it on. And so they don't feel the need to learn anything. And one of the things they do not learn is a proper story structure. Tons of these little movies would be infinitely better if someone knew how script was written. Like Jack-O-Lantern, I mean, I wrote it in an eight act structure, even though it's not meant for commercial TV, because an 8 or 9 act structure lets you keep track of what's supposed to happen to keep people interested. You know what I'm saying? And so even when it's not meant for a commercial situation like Lifetime or something, I still work in an 8 and a 9 act structure. And, people they just need the thing is everybody's like when Scream Queens, when the girls finally came along, it was just Linnea and Brink and Michelle. That was pretty much it. You'd go to a chiller theater and every girl, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a Scream Queen. Cause some guy videotaped me in my backyard screaming or whatever. And I said, this is the problem. People want to be famous. They want to say they're a filmmaker or director so quickly. People they want to be famous too fast. Instead of someone saying, "Oh, you made a really good film," they want to be able. And it kind of goes back to the day of VHS when people could get VHS camera, and they had these kids were making these beautiful printed slip boxes. And I said, if you spent half the time making your film that you did making this box, you might have something, because the film looks like you crapped it out in an afternoon, and the box is very professional looking, and the film is very amateur looking, and that's it. People say, "Oh, it's on Blu-ray," and because now you can go to a little place and they'll burn you one Blu-ray if that's what you want, and it's almost like that's the badge of professionalism, is that my thing's on Blu-ray, and I tell people, because there's a lot of junk on Tubi, a lot of crap that's unwatchable on Tubi. And I said, make your money while you can, because this will not last. Tubi will be like Netflix or the VHS store. Eventually, everything will fill up, and you're going to be overflowing, and they're going to go in there like Amazon Prime did, and they just started cherry picking anything that wasn't performing, got tossed off the platform. And that's going to happen with Tubi. They're going to start tossing people off to make room for better selling product. Somebody said yesterday, they said, "Fred, we saw you on some Ed Wood Awards." I said, "You know what? I hosted, me and Ted Boas were drunk out of our minds, and we hosted this award ceremony one night somewhere, and we even had drinks in our hands. And it was just embarrassing. It was embarrassing. But we were funny because we would say anything. I don't care who the guest was. I would say anything. Well, years later, they put a video of the award ceremony out on DVD, and all of a sudden I'm starring in the Ed Wood Awards and then I said, "Oh my God, where'd you see this?" Guy says, "Oh, it's on Tubi." And I said, "You're telling me that a handy cam from like 1990 or something, where I hosted this award ceremony in Crystal City, Virginia, is playing on Tubi?" And I mean, I'm loaded, Ted's loaded, and we never thought at the time that we were A, being videotaped, or B, that it would be put in our faces 20 years later on a streaming platform. And that's the kind of stuff that they're accepting right now. But I think that the worm will turn soon. And if you don't have something that's performing, these guys with these little shows are going to be out of business. Not that they're in business.
I was thinking if you do a few Jacko 2 screenings, you should bring back the Night Owl with the, like cigar and stuff, and sit in a chair like on stage, and
Yeah. Get two topless girls to come out with a martini.
That's what I'm saying. I think people would dig that.
It's funny. It was my wife at the time who said, "Fred," she goes, "you should make this little intro and make it to where the way people think you live, the way they think your life is." And I said, "What is that?" And they said, "Well, you've got these chesty girls who light your cigar when you come through the door, and one hands you a martini, and then I'll come out, and you can pull the movie out from between my cleavage, and people can ask you a dumb question." And we shot those, of course, in the studio. And we, of course, don't live like that at all. Although for my birthday a couple of years ago, I did put out the word I was looking for a girl to serve me a martini topless on my birthday, and I had a couple offers. I picked the right one, and so I did actually do that.
Hi, I've just got back from the set of Masseuse Bodybuilding Bikini Babes 3, and let me tell you, directing in the movie business is hard work. So when I get home at night, I want to relax. Thank you. And I like to have a good time. And I like to watch a movie. The kind of movies I like, the kind of movies I make. Let's take a look at one.
How many of those Night Owl intros did you do, and did you shoot them all in one day, or?
Oh no. We didn't shoot them all in one day. They were months apart, but we never did just one. We would do, you could kind of tell because it'd be the same girls in like 4 or 5 of them. So we never knew far enough in advance, and on the DVD company, we didn't know far enough in advance which titles we were going to put out. Even now, you know, I'll decide to do a Blu-ray double feature or something, then I'll get it authored. But if you asked me 30 days earlier, I wouldn't know what I was going to do. So we put a bunch of them off. If you get the Bikini Drive-In Blu-ray, almost all the night out theaters that we could find are on that. Also, all the Morella graveyard theaters that we produced are on that, and some of the Retro Media Drive-In. Once we got tired of doing the studio, so it was expensive to shoot, and I didn't think anybody cared. I really didn't believe that because nobody ever responded. None of the fans ever responded to the night out theaters. I said nobody cares. Nobody's watching this shit. So we said let's do a drive-in theater when Kim and I would just sit in the car with the drive-in speaker, and we would introduce some movies. So we did a bunch of those too. So we did a bunch of that. I tried to put everything I had. Everything that had no home went on the Bikini Drive-In Blu-ray. Everything I had, all the bloopers, my 35 bloopers for the whole 90s, all the 90s, Inner Sanctum, through Mind Twister, Telly Savalas, through Demon Sword, through Haunting Fear, through this and this. All the bloopers, 35 bloopers, are all together on the Bikini Drive-In Blu-ray.
Did you have you ever done, or are you going to do a movie with your son?
Well, I've worked. I don't know how many movies I've made with Chris. You're talking about Christopher. Yeah. Chris and I have probably made 10 to 15 movies together. You know, because he directs his own films, but for me, he would line produce or UPM. He's in the DGA as well. And we did the Steven Seagal film together. We did the Chevy Chase movie together. We did 10 to 15 films together. Now he's just got a new Night of the Living Dead coming out with Vivica Fox and Robert Carradine and Rob Van Dam. It's done now. It's just now finished. So I expect to see that soon. But you know, he likes to do his own thing. He wants to be a director, and I don't want to be his producer. But he's coming down and working on Jacko. So he's gonna line produce Jack-O-Lantern 2.
Awesome.
So, yeah, that'll be the first thing we've done together for the last 2 years.
Cool. Well, I forgot did he do a Jack-O-Lantern movie as well, or I forgot what it was called, a clown movie.
He did Circus Kane.
That's what it was.
Which was like an escape room movie.
Yeah, I like that movie a lot. I think I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, Chris likes that. He likes that kind of gory stuff where, you know, somebody's crawling under something and a nail goes into their arm and kind of drags along, and you know, he's that's his thing. He loves that stuff, and he did Meth Gator.
Nice.
Yeah, he did. You know, it's not a bad little film. It was made here in Florida. It was made cheaply. But I saw it, and I thought, you know what? It was pretty good, actually, you know.
Awesome. Let's see. Like father, like son.
So I tried to touch film myself one time because the guy who cut in Hollywood Chainsaw, he wasn't moving fast enough for me. And I said, well, I'll get in there and try to help him. I tore up that film so fast. I ripped all the sprockets out of that one reel. And I just backed off, and I said, you know, Fred, it's not for you to be touching. Don't be touching the film. So... Wow. It started and ended. Although I did edit Alien Dead in 16 millimeter myself, but it didn't have any coverage. You just had to link the shots together.
Nice. So William Grafé hasn't directed a movie in a while, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't think since Whiskey Mountain.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
I mean, maybe a short thing. You know, Bill is 95. He's on a cane. I drive all the way from here to Fort Lauderdale every month or so, and I pick him up and I take him to lunch. Then I take him back to his house, and I drive the 3.5 hours back to here. I do it in a day. But he's you know, he's sharp as a tack, but physically the wear and tear of making a movie would kill him. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great day.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right.
This is Fred Olen Ray, and you've been watching Grindcast. And if you enjoyed this interview, check out my book, Hellbent for Hollywood, A Director's Journey, available on Amazon.